Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Inlay Terms. I'm your host, Payman Ascari, and today we have with us the lovely Miss Zelda Levine. How are you doing, Zelda?
Good. And you, thank you for having me.
No, thanks for coming on. You and I talked a little bit on the over the phone or offline, and I was really impressed. And I was like, I basically begged you to come on, so thank you.
No, thank you. And thank you for what you're doing and you're going to be running for office. And thank you for that from Canada. More people need to be doing it.
Yeah, hopefully, you ran for office as well for a school board trustee, and hopefully, when more people like us step up, it'll encourage others to as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. That's what we have to do. Although we really need an election first, but and we all know that.
Yeah, yeah.
The big election, a federal election, we got to get Trudeau out.
He's basically on his way out. He's tearing down the wallpaper on the way out, but I don't see
He
anyway.
really is. He really is. But it's
Yeah.
driving a lot of us nuts. I can see online a lot of Canadians being driven nuts. Being driven nuts. That internationally, people think he's gone. I make jokes online that internationally, people think that it's like Assad, that the Israelis, toppled him and he was flown off to Moscow and he's finished, And a lot of Canadians, including me, are like, wait, 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 you guys, he's still here. Stop cheering. He's here. He's in the PMO. It's all going on until it's not. We don't have, So I think that's frustrating. It's really frustrating for me, frustrating, I think, for a lot of people.
This would be like it's really strange when you say I intend to resign. Like Nixon didn't say I intend to resign at one point. Like you resign or you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's more sociopathic narcissism. It really is. And you see it on his face and you see it on his CV. And it's kind of horrible. Yeah, we just have to get through month to month to month till he's out and this terrible regime is out. But then the next step is that we don't have a functioning opposition. When I'll just say when Poilievre and the Conservatives are in, we don't have a functioning opposition. So he's got all the mandate he wants to be whatever it is he is or isn't. So that I think is terrifying.
It's also terrifying that I can't get a read on the guy because he just uses slogans and he's very vague. They don't really do too many press releases. So it's anybody's guess what their platform is.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a platform online. Okay, you can read it. And I enjoyed the Jordan Peterson conversation. It's the first time I've seen him for that amount of time unscripted and off the cuff. So that was good. That was useful. Except I remember him all the way back to, and lots do, I'm not the only one, to pandemic, when he just hid inside his writing for the entire 2 years, masked doing photo ops in his writing, and he just kept his nose down, his nose clean. And other people were out there taking the hits. Roman Baber and Maxime, Bernier was, and Pastor Art in Calgary. There were a handful of people who were standing out to be counted, and Poilievre was not one of them. And I'm not the only one who's remembering this. So, and speak gender, if we want to talk about gender, it was the Conservatives in opposition, 2-3 years ago with Michelle Rempel, who they wrote, promoted, and passed Bill C-4 that criminalized parents, criminalized parents for what did they call it? That backwards flip of disinformation.
The gender affirming care.
Yeah, no, not gender affirming care. When you conversion therapy. So
Okay.
30 years ago, conversion therapy meant that you were a homophobic parent and you took your what you thought gay child off to somebody to get the gayness out of them, right? To de-gay them. That's what conversion therapy used to mean decades ago, and it was understandably a horrible thing. That stopped, right? This language was brought back in these gender wars. They flipped it to mean a parent who did not want to who refused to trans their child. So you've got a little girl saying, I'm a boy, a little boy saying, I'm a girl, and a parent who's saying, whoa, let's figure out what this is actually all about. And speaking with the child, taking the child off to a non-affirming psychologist, psychiatrist, they barely exist. But so that became known as conversion therapy. Or anyway, what Bill C4 did was criminalize a parent who said to their kid, their little kid or middle school kid or teen or whatever, 18 or whatever old, saying, there are two sexes, you're one of them, let's deal with this. So Bill C4 criminalized this. And it was the conservatives, not the liberals, not the NDP, who promoted this, wrote this, and pushed it through.
Yeah, it's so the two things in there I want to talk about. Let's go over the conservatives not really being conservative or not being in opposition. It's not even like you can broaden that, and
Well,
the criticism is
anyway. Go,
yeah, I
sorry.
know, I get that, but like it's not just that the conservatives are not conservatives. It's we are going to reelect a lot of these SOBs that were in power that destroyed our lives. Like I don't know if this lady is running again, but Yara Sachs, she came out and she said Hong Kong is the new Heil Hitler, and she got away with it.
Yeah.
Like that should have been like they should have at least thrown her out for the day, if not thrown her out of the party. That's a vile thing to say, but
Isn't she,
nothing.
she's NDP.
I thought she was liberal, but what difference does it make?
Yeah, no, liberal NDP. No, she's terrible. She's terrible. She's terrible. But and a few of these liberal MPs will probably remain after the election. A few, ugh.
Yeah. The polling is saying that there's going to be only 6 left. I have a feeling they're going to increase that number as people forget Trudeau and as they start attacking Polyev.
Yeah, well, see, okay, then that's the mainstream media discussion, because I believe, I mean, I can't be the only one, obviously, it's not like I'm, not big genius talk. The reason that Maxime Bernier didn't do better, PPC didn't do better during the last federal election was because CBC buried him. CTV and Global, they buried him. It was nothing but daily slander and defamatory reports for the entire election. So what happens when the liberals are out and they don't have the same firm hand they had on the media? Then what will the media? How will the media handle? Right? Like at what point is the grip going to be lessened, weakened, removed? Do you know what I mean? The Trudeau grip on the media and on the narrative.
Well, it remains to be seen what's going to happen. But I had a podcast this morning and I was speaking to a gentleman out in PEI. I was saying how giving $1 billion to a media corporation that gives favorable treatment to you and one or two other parties, that's election interference.
Yes, absolutely. Every single election that we've had, including the provincial ones, including our little civic ones, the little school board trustee candidates, we were interfered with. We were actively interfered with. I mean, I still have them on my desktop somewhere. I know my co-candidates have kept these things. No, we were attacked by CBC. We were attacked by the anti-hate liberals, anti-hate group. Those guys,
Yeah.
Farber, all of them. We were attacked by Ben and Jerry's by the media. We were, even the little school trustee candidates.
Okay, let's take it from the top. Tell us about your election. Why did you run? Where did you run? And how did it go?
Vancouver, civic election, 2022. And there were, I don't know, 2-3 main parties, big funded parties with lots of resources. A couple of people I knew were running as independents on the gender platform, get gender ideology out of K-12. So that was my line. Get gender ideology, SOGI, people call it SOGI. It's gender ideology. Get gender ideology out of K to 12. Just ran on that platform as independents, and we just ran around the city being, whatchamacallit, I always forget the word. Um, uh, what's that word? When you
Door
run,
knocking,
yeah, not door. We didn't door knock, but
canvassing.
yeah, we did canvas. We just, got ourselves out there. We went to schools after school to speak to parents. We, tried to do publicity. We tried to buy ads. We were refused by the big corporations, of course, and by TransLink. We were refused by TransLink. We were refused ads, because it was taboo. It was taboo. No, you're a bunch of transphobes. You're transphobes. We can't have any transphobic advertising. Well, so I just jumped in with these two moms, and I jumped in too because I could, because my kids were finished school. I wouldn't get any blowback from schools and teachers, which you can get. Parents get blowback when they're the wrong politics. So my kids were out of school, and I actually didn't know anything about it. I knew very, very little about gender ideology because I hadn't run into it as a parent, which is just for no reason. The same reason that kids fall into um the trans experience. I don't know what to call it. They fall. It's just luck of the draw that your kids are sucked into the system or they're not. So luck of the draw, mine weren't, and they hadn't really known other kids. So I really didn't know much about it. If it's not in your sphere, you don't really know what it's about. You don't know what it's about until you dive into it, until you're either forced into it like a parent of a trans kid, or you do a deep dive like I did. So I did a deep dive and ran with these other two independents, and I was screamed at outside of my home. I had to call the police. We had police called on us because we were speaking to parents outside the schoolyard. We were. I mean, it was just. We had a lot of. It was a crazy campaign. That was the word I was looking for. It was a crazy campaign. We only got publicity from alt media. That's the only people. But even so, and I might be missing some big pieces. Even so, we got about $10,000, 10,000 votes each, which is pretty incredible. Seeing as we had no mainstream media, only negative, no, other than negative, only no mainstream media coverage, no advertising, no. And that's it wasn't because we're all so cute. It was because our message resonated, and people in alt media sent it through their channels, and people realized, oh, there are these three women and they're trying to get gender ideology out of schools. Yeah. So
So you mentioned that a lot, like TransLink and a lot of these companies, they wouldn't let you advertise on them using them. What was your messaging? Like, did you have a picture of like a poor trans kid and all these parents are mocking it? Like, how bad was it?
no, I think that, I mean, it's already so long ago, it's 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right? It's already, but we didn't, we weren't inflammatory by any stretch. And I kind of wasn't I wasn't really the decision maker for a lot of things because I didn't know as much about gender ideology as my co-candidates, even though we were all independents. But so I really left, left a lot of decision making and things to them because they literally knew better. No, it was just photographs, just like the most basic kind of, of election kind of stuff, photos and names and getting gender ideology out of schools. I mean, really, the most basic, not inflammatory kind of stuff. But all these corporations and companies, and they can all smell, anti-diversity from, I mean, HR takes a look at it and goes, no, this is not our messaging. So you can put pedophilic TQ flags on buses and fire trucks in Vancouver, but you can't put you can't put an ad for, people running for school, I mean, school board. Nuts.
What about did you get any pushback from like activists like Antifa?
No, because we weren't in any situation where we ended up being around them with them. But it comes through. It came through via Ben and Jerry's. Ben and Jerry's is a woke activist, and CBC is a woke activist, and so the woke activists are implanted everywhere. They're embedded everywhere. Do you know what I'm saying? You can't avoid them. I mean, who was outside my house screaming at me after I got doxxed? I mean, was that a trans rights activist? I don't know who that was. You know, So, but we didn't like run into them with their black umbrellas, and that was later on at the parents' march. A year later, but we were 2 years later, but we weren't a year and a half later. But that was way far away from the election cycle. I mean, another interesting thing that people have to think about are big city school boards. We were invited to one all candidates meeting. It was in a high school. The audience was couple of high school classes, maybe politics classes, I don't even current events classes. So they invited a couple upper grade classes, and all of the candidates were invited, and the incumbents were there. The school board incumbents were there. That was the only all candidates thing we ever did. That was fascinating. We had a teacher come up to us, literally like in a movie. Like we're on our way leaving, and a woman sidles up in the shadows behind. This is in an auditorium.
Smoking the cigarette, yeah.
Yeah, and says, "That's fantastic what you guys are doing. Thank you so much for doing." A teacher, and there's a lot of teachers who feel like this, right? Thank you for what you're doing, and then she runs away, into the night,
Yeah, it just disappears.
disappear.
Newspapers blowing in the wind.
Right? Yeah. No, nuts. A kid stands up at some point and tells me that I should be sent away out of I should be it's not you're making our school not a safe space. It's not. I'm not feeling a safe space, and you shouldn't even be here, and you women shouldn't even be allowed to run. This is what they're teaching the kids in school. This is what this kid is learning in this school, in this fancy West Side high school, about democracy and how democracy works. Can you imagine? He stood just right up and goes, "You shouldn't even be able to run. You're just making everything, you're dangerous transphobes." And you were like, holy cow. And then back to the school board, to the school board itself. Women on the school board, and this, remember, we're all sitting down, everybody says their pronouns. So that was, that gives you an idea of how the climate in education. Okay, we sit down, we say our everybody says their pronouns. Well, obviously we didn't say ours, and we're here on the unceded territory of blah blah blah. That too, of course. But there was. Don't ask me what the question was. A woman who is an incumbent, and I'm sure she won her seat back. At some point, there was a conversation about budgets. She said out loud, "Yeah, we're the school board. We only get a budget," and somehow in my mind, I have $13 million in my mind. I could be completely off base, but she says, "We only have a budget of XX millions of dollars, and we're over budget now by XX millions of dollars. We need more money." I mean, my brain stopped. And then you start realizing what's going on in what are the school boards, the big city school boards now? And then you start to think, and you realize there's just got to be millions and millions that are laundered through the big city school boards, like especially in Vancouver, in a place like Vancouver, where where real estate is, what it is, and they're sitting on all sorts of land, and there are real estate deals going through. Right? Like a lot of these schools I don't know if you're a parent. Are you a parent?
No.
No. Okay. So, I mean, when you're a school parent, schools are shutting and they're opening, and kids are getting moved here and there because they take these lots, these lands, and they decide, okay, there are not enough kids in them, and we don't have enough, the demographics, and so they sell the land, right? You start to get a picture of a massive business. So the school board, the big city school boards, where land is as valuable as here, as Vancouver, right, where we are and you are, you start to realize, oh, not only like the little school board trustees are just little playthings. This is really about, the education part is top down from the ministry, from the universities to the ministries of education, to the unions, to the teachers federation, to like, this is how it's all of the education is on the curriculum is all top down, which is how it's all Marxist now, all Marxist, right? But the education is just a part of it, because the school board itself, you can tell, is another big business. I would bet anything that there is so much money laundered through these things. It's impossible. How can it not be? The unions are involved, developers are involved, it's big real estate, and the whole education part is kind of a sideline at this point. And the school trustees are nothing. They're just little rubber stamper people. Okay, here you got these papers, sign this. Here you got these papers, sign this, sign this, sign this. I will bet you.
You see that theme all across society now, where the elected officials are almost dwarfed by the administrative staff.
Yeah. 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 So that's my sense. That's my sense. I haven't done any investigation into it, any research into it. It's so bizarre. Which, well, I don't know if you want to go from that to the BC election.
Wait, before we go there, I have a lot of follow-up questions. What did Ben and Jerry's do to you, and how?
Well, that Ben and Jerry's is super woke activist.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. So what did they do? They had, I'm forgetting now. I should have brought it up and looked on it I can always send it to you later. Were they hooked up with the Canadian anti-hate people? Did they do it through that?
I know that they were completely anti-Trump, and they
And
said something. They said you have to return the land back to the Indians. And then one Indian wrote to him, he's like, you do realize that many of your ice cream places are on our land. Give it back.
Right. Good for him. Good for him. Yeah, I can't exactly remember all the details now because it's 2022. But I know it's on my desktop somewhere, and it's on the desktop of my co-candidates. It was an attack. These women, these transphobic candidates, transphobes. They just had to do that. People just have to say transphobe, and that's, it's like every other. It's, that does it, and that did it, and yeah. I can back this all up with stuff on that I still have, but.
Apparently, Wolf is saying, this is from Ben and Jerry's, end racism, build peace. These are great words, but what does it take to end racism? To end racism, we need to dismantle white supremacy in a system that favors white people over others. Apparently, that's from Ben and Jerry's. Yeah, he even put the link. So, not good guys.
No. And I know I just saw their activism pop up the other day online for, what was it about? I don't know. They're anyway, anything woke, they're in. And they stop at nothing. They attacked, two little school board trustee candidates in Canada. Huge, massive international. Can you imagine the machine behind that? The number of people who were hired to just keep that, the slander and defamation machinery going against anybody who stands up. So I don't blame people for not standing up at all. One, if you've got little, if we're just going to talk about school board, if you've got little kids, you've got kids in school, you've got kids who have been caught up in the trans thing, that's a difficult thing to stand for any office. But please, people, stand for office. Please stand for office. Please stand and such a cliche, stand and be counted, but stand up, do what you do. I'm super private. I don't want to be anywhere with my real name. I don't want to, temperamentally, I'm just temperamentally a private. I didn't want to do it.
I'm very shy. At least I was before this. And giving speeches, talking to people. Let me put it this way. When I was running a company, if I had a meeting and I had to wait for the person to come so I could go open the door and shake his hand, that made me nervous. Like having to do small talk made me nervous.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of us are just temperamentally like this. This isn't the time to be, well, I mean, you just can't be. You just have to do what you can do. You have to get out there and do something, This is a
Let
very
me ask you let me ask you a question. Did you get support from like it's one thing for people that are too scared to run, but did your friends and family support you and say you're doing the right thing, Zelda?
uh, uh, um, well, that's a good question. Support. One of the women I ran with was a friend, so so that was, and we were politically on side with each other already because we were friends. So yes, few other friends, yes, yeah, a few other friends, yes, and one who was horrified at my take at pandemic was completely flipped on my candidacy for school board, and she just thought that it was incredible that I was running, that was fantastic and I was doing a great thing. So politics these days, people's takes on all of the issues, they can flip on it, or they can be for this and against this and then against that and for that, and crazy times. Nothing is simple. Yes, so I did get support. The one of my kids was like, really didn't want me to be doing this. You're doing what with your name? And my name is all blah, 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 blah. Well, too bad. Too bad too bad for you. Um,
Did you, let me ask it a different way then. Did you have any friends that were horrified that you were running?
I don't speak to them anymore.
Okay,
I'm
good.
I'm a what's that slash, and I always forget what's the phrase?
Scorched earth, slash and
Scorched
burn.
earth. I'm very scorched earth. I'm very scorched earth. I've left a lot of people behind, even like all over the country and even here in Vancouver. So I'm sure that there were people who saw oh, she's doing that. Oh, she's a transphobe. Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah. So
These
yeah,
attacks, they really stick. So in your case, it's transphobe. In my case, ironically, it's racist. The sexist thing is just it doesn't really work as well anymore. I think transphobe, racist, climate change denier is another
right,
one.
right. Yep, yep. COVID something.
Anti-vaxxer, that one's kind of lost its punching power.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I would think that when we spoke before. I told you that I'd volunteered to campaign door knock and sign wave for PPC in 2021. So then those epithets were still flying around, anti-vaxxer and all that kind of stuff. Go get vaxxed, you psycho bitch. That's what I got one time.
You know, uh, so things have changed a lot in the last 48 hours, 72 hours since January 6th. But like even before that, in the last month, um, the number of people that previously viciously judged me for not getting vaccinated, like one guy came out and he's vaccine injured. I make sure not to make eye contact with him. I didn't want to give him the I told you so look. So he's vaccine injured. So many people telling me they're not taking any more vaccines. So
Yeah,
many people out of the blue, unsolicited, don't know I'm running for the PPC, tell me that they're worried about transgenderism in schools. It's affecting people. Healthcare, there's another one. People don't care if you're vaccine injured, but when they go to the hospital and they have to wait 4 hours, all of a sudden they start caring.
right. Yeah, yeah. I'm sort of adjacent to the woo woo spiritual community around, yeah, around in the West, and they talk about spiritual wake ups. and waking up as as they believe the humanity's consciousness rises. It rises daily, and these are the people who they would say are waking up. Yeah, and it's not meant in a demeaning way. It's meant truly spiritually. Souls are waking.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, things are changing. What else can we talk about before moving on? When I talk to my constituents, so very careful with my messaging, right? And when I talk to constituents, I listen to how they tell me their views about transgenderism, and it's funny. Sometimes they don't even use the word transgenderism or LGBTQ. One mother told me that she doesn't like how the schools are disrespecting parents. So I thought that was good, parental rights kind of issue.
Yep.
Another parent told me that in her daughter's class there's a kid that's transitioning, like the kid's 10, and she's like, that's absurd. At 10 years old, like, you don't even know what you are. Like, how could you possibly know your gender? So I act like a mirror. Like, I listen to what they're saying and I use that in my messaging.
And this is unbidden. You're not walking up and saying, "Let's talk about gender."
You know what yeah, exactly. What I do now when I'm at these events, the dinner parties, social events, I just sit there and I don't open my mouth. I don't say I'm PPC. At some point, they're going to bring this stuff up.
Right. Amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. So it's seeping through to the people who never thought about it, who it hasn't really touched, and and now they're saying something about it. The fact that they're even saying something about it means the climate has changed, because they know there's something in them that tells them, I'm not going to get labeled a transphobe, or if I do, somebody else is going to come to my defense, or they just feel that it's a truth that can't be censored anymore. Like, whatever the reasons that they're saying that's fantastic.
I think the media, they burnt through their capital. Like, they had sort of credibility, but
Yeah.
they expended it all from 2016. It's kind of started there with Trump, and then 2020 it just went into overdrive, and they spent the last 4 years burning through all that capital. So
Yeah.
now I don't have to go and educate the electorate. The electorate just looks at their own lying eyes. They'll be like, what the hell is the CBC talking about?
Right. Fantastic. That's fantastic. So let's see what's going to happen to CBC, CTV Global once the election cycle starts, once the election campaign itself starts.
What do you think?
I don't know, because Trudeau's still paying them, Liberals are still paying them, but the entire climate has shifted. It's shifted so much. How is mainstream media going to keep the same messaging and narratives? I don't know. I don't know.
My guess is Pierre Poilievre will do like a press release, and he'll showing him dismantling the CBC, and then all that money will probably just get routed to friendly media like Rebel News and True North, because
During the campaign is what you're saying. You think that
no,
during
once he's in power,
yeah, but what about that little window of time while the Liberals are still in the election period? Okay, election is called, boom, election campaigning has started. So before Poilievre gets elected, during that little window, what's gonna happen? Like over the past 9 years, over these past 3 elections, right? We knew it was just a Trudeau machine, a Trudeau narrative machine that he had paid for, that was, buried Bernier and and sort of supported NDP, and it just played with everybody. It played with everything, the disinformation machine, right? But what's it going to be now? Now that it knows it's lost, it's losing, and it's lost. It's lost, and it's only going to keep a few seats. And NDP is only going to keep a few seats, if any. We hope none. Oh, none. And it knows that Poilievre is going to. What's mainstream media going to do? Right there.
I mean, no crystal ball here, but if I had to guess, once Trudeau's out, like, he's got to go, because right now he's a lightning rod for everybody's hatred and anxiety. So once he goes, then the political machine can refocus all of its efforts towards attacking the Conservative Party, And the only thing it really has to do is ask the Conservative Party tough questions. What's your tax policy? You want to balance the budget? How? Because right now, Pierre Poilievre is just keeping his mouth shut because he knows everybody hates Trudeau. Once Trudeau's gone, he's got to open his mouth and he's got to start talking. And I think then the CBC machine their goal will just be to lose as few MP seats as possible. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. What's your guess? Do you have a guess on a leader, on a Liberal leader? Do you have a guess on who they're gonna?
I'm not really good with this stuff. So there's a lot of people out there smart. They evaluate everything. I'm a very superficial guy. So I'm like, well, like it's got to be a girl. Chrystia Freeland's put a lot of weight on. Maybe Melanie Jolie. She could be attractive, but she's white. So they want someone of color. Anita Anand. Like, or what's the other one? She got kicked out. Jody Wilson Raybould.
What, Raybould?
Yeah. Like, just bring her in.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's interesting. I'm going to put those two names away. Yeah.
If I was a strategist and I wanted for the Liberals, I'd be like, you know what? Bring a woman that's also biracial, and then tone down your mission. I'm not saying don't go. You can still be crazy LGBTQ activists. Just don't outwardly. Just be more moderate. Just come out and say, we made a mistake. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to balance the budget. Just pick the three. We're going to lower immigration. We're going to balance the budget. We're going to build up the military. You're not going to do any of this.
Yeah.
Just say this.
Nice BIPOC female face.
Exactly. And then lie. With a woman, you lock down the female vote. You lock down the immigrant vote. And then just boom, there you go.
Right. Anita Anand and Wilson Raybould. Right. Yeah, that's interesting. That is interesting. Okay.
Again, I've been known to be wrong more times than I'm right. So.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Do you want to just use that to use? I shouldn't use the word transition, but should we transition seamlessly to the BC Conservative Party? What's going on there?
Right. Well, I'm just a little ordinary person. I mean, I'm just, I'm not inside. I don't know anything. I mean, I think I'm a member of BC Conservatives because I did support them. Of course, I supported them. So they, there's this horrible provincial government sitting there, with EB, and it's a nightmare. It's just a nightmare. Really a nightmare. The health bill 36, absolute nightmare. I mean, it could be the UN and WHO that are running BC. Well, a little bit of communist China thrown in too. So, okay, then John Rustad gets thrown out of the Liberals, right? He got thrown out because he wasn't towing the line on climate for what's his face, the past Liberal leader, right?
Horgan?
No, the Liberal leader, the provincial Liberal leader, because now they're
Falcon?
Yeah, Falcon. Okay, so Falcon throws Rustad out. First time most of us have ever heard of Rustad's name, right? So there he is. He's independent, and then he restarts this long dormant BC Conservatives. Yay! Everybody's like, oh, okay. Well, there's something. So we all sort of go, hold our breath and go, okay. Well, let's. And what happened was he leaves. He's an independent. He gets kicked out. He goes independent. Then he decides to restart however it was that happened. He decided to start the BC Conservatives, and then there were two BC by-elections. Boom, that came right up. Two by-elections, which nobody ever looks at by-elections unless you happen to be in that by-election. So that's how come I knew. So I'm in one of the first by-elections that came up way last spring. So I volunteered for it. I volunteered for the candidate. So that's how come I saw it. So I met him and I volunteered and I did all that same stuff that I'd done in PPC for just to volunteer, volunteered. But then you got to kind of see it up close for a little bit for the first time. And the other by-election was on the island. A guy, he campaigned a lot for a train thing, something like that. Anyway, I don't know anything. So there were these two by-elections. So we were already introduced. A few of us were introduced super early to this old new BC Conservative Party. And it seemed like it was going to be a real thing. It looked like it could be a real thing. And it seemed quite authentic and genuine. And he seemed authentic and genuine. And he seems authentic and genuine, Rustad. So fine. That happened. The candidate lost here. NDP reinstalled its same garbage. well, new garbage, but yeah, NDP garbage. And and then we had the election. So, oh, I didn't really volunteer during the provincial election, but watched it closely. Fine. They did fantastic. You had that amazing, you had,
Go on.
oh yeah, you Kim, ugh, I'm
Kari
terrible.
Simpson. Kari Simpson.
Carrie Simpson's K. I knew it was a K. Carrie, you had Carrie Simpson on right after the election. Wow, she was amazing. People have to go back and look at your podcast about. And I don't know how much she's correct or not correct, or where she's changed her position or where she hasn't. But wow, she had a real story to tell about the inner workings. That was amazing after the election. And then after that, then we started to see, well, there's two gender ideologues. There's two trans right TRAs, trans rights activists, TRAs, the gender lingo. Uh, they've got one full-on trans rights activist in the party, not just in the party, but a star of the party. She won her seat. They had brought her over from the dying, dissolving United Liberals, or whatever they were called, Liberals Unite, whatever it was called. Sturco, full on trans rights activist. I mean, that's in evidence on paper. You just this and this and this and this. And you're like, what? What are the BC Conservatives doing, welcoming in and giving star treatment to gender ideologues? What? So, and then you realize there's this other woman too who's now an MLA, and she's another gender ideologue, and you realize, you guys, well, and then they let go of a few people after the election, not just pre-election, which you and I talked about, right? All the candidates, that the candidate hopefuls that they wouldn't let run, right? And even one candidates that they had named, and they kicked them out. So it looks like this BC Conservative Party, in terms of gender ideology, it's you can't say as bad as the NDP because they don't have power, but they have not taken the stand that their voters wanted them to take. Nobody voted for BC Conservatives thinking that they would have active gender ideologues in their party continuing the promotion of gender ideology in BC, and that's what they've got.
So I want to put 4 names out, a 5th one if I can remember. Sean Taylor and Corinne Morey were 2 stellar candidates that put their names in to run, and they were just ignored and ignored and ignored until they finally decided to run as independents. So that was the first warning. And then there was Stephen Malthouse was the most infamous one, where they kicked him out. That was like a clear NDP hit job, and the party should have rallied around him, in my opinion, but they just folded like a cheap suit. Maybe before that was Jan Webb, but at the same time you had Jan Webb. She put out a controversial tweet, and they fired her in a very, very dishonorable manner.
Yeah.
And then there was Alexander Wright, I think was the other one from Nanaimo. She was a lawyer, and she just got kicked out. And I think it's because she had sort of right of center views. And then add to that, you mentioned the 2 trans rights activists or pro-transgender ideology. And also there was that former NDP, she had like an Irish name. She was former BC NDP. So something like McClellan or something like that.
I can't
And
remember.
she believed in all the NDP policies, but the drug policy backfired. Like I think there was some junkies on her doorstep or something. So
Right.
she's like, I'm going to pick up the cause and I'm going to run for the BC Conservative Party.
Yeah. No, this is nuts. This is nuts. So, yeah. Yeah. And do you follow, again, terrible with names, Paul Ratchford?
No.
I think it's Paul Ratchford. I think it's Paul Ratchford, who ran a fantastic campaign in Eby's riding, and I think he got close to I mean, it was
The
a hard,
tough writing. Yeah.
tough, yeah. And he just did a fantastic job. And he has now left the party, and not as a sore loser or a sour grape, which some people are suggesting. But he's left and he's being openly critical on his ex account.
I saw that. I saw that. So I think one or two people have done that. The problem is, with the fog of war, like you never know who's being honest and who is just like an agitator. So
Yeah, true, true. I mean, I believe he's genuine. I believe
okay.
I believe that he's completely genuine and that he's coming from the right place. I think he didn't realize that. I think he was disappointed by the party and by the party leader and by the party machinery, and I think he's. I mean, but that's just me.
So you and I talked about this. This is a theory that somebody shared with me, that trans rights activist, the former police officer, what's her name?
Oh yeah, what's her face? Sturko.
Sturko. They're probably going to position her to replace John when he's done.
Right, right. Well, that's not a conservative party. Because you have
Yeah,
an ex-cop in a party doesn't mean it's conservative. I mean, that's insane. That is insane. The things that she's been connected with. I mean, for those of us who've been in the gender space, wow, wow. She organized and championed. I mean, I believe she organize and apparently organize and champion a TQ flag for the RCMP, for an RCMP detachment building or something? And was she behind Drea Humphrey? Rebel has done a lot of great work on this. I think she also was behind that bizarre work work fair, RCMP. Come join the RCMP and work for the RCMP to a high school in Chilliwack. Do you remember this story? Did I
you
say
told me the other day, and I've already forgotten it. Tell me.
I should have gone off and tried to find that blog where they kept the video, the audio, the audio of what had happened. So no, I'm just somebody has told me that Sturgo was behind the organization of that. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. But so the RCMP go to do or participate in a high school work, one of those days of here, work for all these different companies. Was RCMP the only thing there, or were there other organizations, institutions, companies? I don't know, but it's specific to TQ, to trans queer. For some reason, LGB, but most of the LGBs actually don't want to be having anything to do with the TQs. So, but it was a sort of a rainbow RCMP promoted event. Come and join the RCMP and be who you are, right? Be trans and queer. And among the officers who were sent to the job fair was trans. I mean, it's popularly called a trans woman RCMP, right? An autogynephile RCMP, a man in women's clothes, to the school, to high school kids. Okay, so that's one thing. That's bad enough. This man used the girls' bathroom.
You were telling me this. I remember this. Yeah.
Used the girls' bathroom in the school. And what was on this blog? I've got to find this blog, and I'll try and send it to you. Was this? I tried to see if there was any X connected to the blog or an email that you could talk to them. There were no names attached to it, but the audio was the audio. I mean, it wasn't a lie. This RCMP male in women's clothing goes and uses the girls' bathroom, not even the staff women's bathroom in this school, but the girls' bathroom, student girls' bathroom, underage, these are minors. Bathroom. Two teenage boys who are upset about it, but they don't act out or behave poorly or do any sort of an activist kind of thing. They just say to each other, "This really blows. This is bizarre," and they go outside and sit in the grass. They go and they leave. They're followed out by the principal and the vice principal of the school, so the admin, who asked them, "Why have you let?" And it's all in audio. Why did you leave the work fair? Why did you leave the job fair? Who gave you permission to do this? And why are you here? And what's the problem?" And the boys are saying, "Well, that RCMP used the girls' bathroom. That shouldn't be." And they're just having this discussion, and the boys are basically bullied. They're being bullied by the admin, by the school admin. Having just experienced a man in a dress using the girls' bathroom at a trans queer RCMP job fair. You can't even make this up. You can't make this up. The story just disappeared, but I'm sure, I mean, I have to go back to Drea Humphrey and say, "You remember this, right?" And somebody else too, because it was all documented.
Do you
I
remember
mean,
a movie? This is from the 80s. It was called Kindergarten Cop.
I remember I never saw it.
Oh, it's just it stars Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's a kindergarten cop, kindergarten teacher,
Right.
cop undercover, and like he every first of all, like when he goes to school, he wears a blazer, a tie, shirt tucked into his jeans. The female teachers wear a skirt. Like everyone's presentable, and everything is about the students, the safety of the students. The principal's main concern is the students. None of this political nonsense. And I feel like it has to do with what you said earlier, where like you said, everything is top down, like a university, a union, school board. I think it's money. Like our tax dollars are going to the province, and we have to claw them back with restrictions. And the LGBTQ community has just come in and they've hijacked the political system,
Absolutely.
provincial.
At every level, every level. I've even seen my co-candidate passed a video on to me of a discussion in the teachers union, and it was of an activist lawyer, Finley, who everybody knows about. She's infamous, and the union president and they're just speaking openly about all this as they were instituting it, as they were organizing and instituting it and making it institutional, making it. It's horrifying. So, you were thinking that was the thing about BC Conservatives. We were thinking, okay, finally, this machine can be, that we can throw the BC Conservatives will throw the spokes in the gears and bring this to a grinding halt, and we can turn things around. Well, no, not if you got trans right. Not if BC Conservatives now is peopled by trans rights activists who are the stars of the show. Like you say, are they positioning her, things to get her in and Rustad out?
Yeah, that was a theory. Somebody, I think it was Corinne Maury who told me that. They said, a grapevine. Somebody mentioned that, and then I watched the debate with the Green Party lady Eby and Rustad. And first of all, Eby and the Green Party lady, I don't know her name. They teamed up against Rustad, which is understandable. They're both left,
Yeah.
but the leader of the Green Party, very very attractive woman, and she kept hurling the same insult at Rustad. He said, "This is a guy stuck in the 50s. This is an old man." So he got this crusty old image, and I could see his political career just being destroyed in real time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Is she the one that kept her seat or lost her seat? Or she lost her seat, but she kept the leadership something. The Greens, I can never figure out. Yeah.
She lost her. She didn't win, so she's still the leader.
Right.
But her and one two of her whatever candidates they won,
Right.
but she didn't.
Yeah. 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 No, big disappointment. Big disappointment. The election, post-election. Yeah.
Remember how I told you I'm very, I think superficially, you asked me who should run for the Liberal candidacy?
Right.
Here's another example. Very attractive woman, very articulate. And I think whoever put her in the Green Party, they're like, let's just get this woman up front and, we'll get the male vote because men, we're simple minded. Maybe we'll get the women vote and she seems sincere.
Yeah.
Somebody didn't give that message to Rustad. I'm like, put this guy on a treadmill, get him some plastic surgery, anything.
Right, right. But that's my sense of him, is that he really is a genuine, authentic guy. And maybe I'm just wrong. People can fool you. But that he was just running on his actual, genuine, authentic past, of being an MLA up there doing what he's doing. I mean, maybe he's just completely been hijacked by his machine.
I've asked people that question, and most of them say exactly what you said. He's a good guy, and then the reasons they give is he's overworked. He's only one guy. He got dropped in the deep end, like he never expected the party to grow like this. His advisors around him are really bad. The president of the party, Aisha, whatever, wholly unqualified to run a political party. That was
Oh,
another issue.
I don't know her. Wow.
And I'm guessing at the end of the day, they were afraid of the media machine. I think that's why they caved so quickly to get the populist candidates out.
Oh God. I just it's mind-boggling. It
I
actually
can
is.
tell. I can tell you this is the one fear that paralyzes. I'm going to call them conservatives, the right conservatives. The one fear that paralyzes them is we have to cater to the center. We have to win so that we can enact change. And the moment they do that and they cater to the center, they'll never be able to flip back to whatever they wanted to originally be when they got into power.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Unless you have somebody like a Trump, somebody who's got so much charisma and has such a fire of his own burning inside that nobody can. Well, that's not true either. But it's much harder to sway
Yeah,
them, shove them, move them.
it's. I concede that it's a different environment here in Canada. Like the Canadian yearning for liberty is like 1% of the American yearning. But you're right. You need somebody like a melee, just literally go. Maybe not a chainsaw. What would be an equivalent of a chainsaw in Canadian? Like a, I don't know, an axe. What do we
Yeah.
have? A snowblower?
Yeah. Chainsaws. We have chainsaws. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to think, who do I wish had risen up through the ranks? I know Canada. I know. And with Trump, trolling us right now. Gonna buy Canada, gonna buy Canada, 51st state, all this stuff. And Bruce Parties said he's has he even have I seen him say anything directly? No, I think I just saw him retweet something, repost something on X that was really interesting. Um, and you wonder what he's thinking from a constitutional point of view, from a the bones of, the framework of Canada point of view. What would it, what some of these people think? I mean, you're talking to them all. What would you think of of being swallowed by America? You
My
know,
personal opinion, why the hell would America want to do that? What are they going to do? They're going to pay
these
for all
are,
our health care, our
yeah, yeah.
unions.
I mean, they would just they just light a match to that, and that would be finished. And we'd get their dollar. And I don't know. I don't know. I'm really divided. How do you? Yeah. How do you feel about it?
I well, I mean, I could see them taking us on like a Puerto Rico, but for me, Donald Trump taking Canada in would be like Donald Trump making Washington D.C. a state. Why would he do that? Washington D.C. is 98% Democrat. Canada is 98% Democrat if they switched over.
So we have a harder right than we used to have, or than we've had since maybe the 50s.
Yes, Prairie. I didn't catch Pierre Poilievre's speech today. I don't know. I
Oh
think.
no, I
Did you?
didn't.
Did you
No, I didn't. I didn't see it. But if it's
uh,
scripted, it's not going to be as interesting as It's all he's so.
why don't I take this moment to read something Andre Milosh wrote, former PPC candidate. Polyev cannot open his mouth because he doesn't have any brains to support a real political program. But Prairie, if you tell me what he said, I'll read it out. So you're asking me if there's more of an active right. It's a combination of the left. You can call it the left, the liberals, the progressives. They've really mismanaged things.
Oh
But
yeah,
I
terrible.
think
Yeah,
the elephant in the room is mass immigration. Like they brought in so many people so quickly that it's leading. If you're a white male 18 to 25, 30, and you're down and you're lucky, can't afford your rent, and all of a sudden you see all of these newcomers,
yeah.
you hyper fixate on that. So there is a racial element. And
Yeah.
thanks, the media being what it is, they don't say this is Trudeau's fault. They say it's these racist white boys. So it's a big mess.
Oh, terrible. Terrible. And in the, ye olden days, in Canada, people were brought in, they were told where to live. They were told where to live. Immigrants were brought in. You were lucky if you were allowed in. You were plunked into the middle of Manitoba, the middle of Saskatchewan, the middle of nowhere, right? 1,000 miles from nowhere. And you were made to make your life there, and you were made to learn English and to be whatchamacallit to the Queen, and to learn what it was to be Canadian and Canadian values and Canadian culture, which was all being created at the time. That all switched with, Trudeau with Trudeau Senior, multiculturalism, and then the rest of the destruction was done by his son.
Yeah, the circle is complete.
Yeah, so people can't even imagine a time when people were required, obligated to learn English, do this, abide by law, rules and laws, and da 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 da, to be a Canadian. People don't even remember that at this point. You have to realize there are little kids who've never seen another prime minister other than Trudeau. 9 years. That's 9 years of a kid's life. There are 9-year-olds running around
So
having never seen another prime minister.
those kids will never have a shot at a good future.
Yeah.
We're born at the worst time.
So yeah, this is just a unprecedented times.
You mentioned how the people were brought and they're just dumped and they had to make their own way. Even recently, like when we came here, my parents brought me here, they had a point system, and part of that, like, you had to prove A, that you had income, and B, you had to source a house before you came here. Like, if you did two of those, just those two things right now, it would solve 90% of the problem.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
I don't know if you're fault because I'm in this world. So Iranians, for example, I always pick on my own people. They come here on a tourist visa, and then once they set foot in Canada, they can go in and change their visa to a working visa. That's how they get around that system.
Yeah. And it's going to be, I'm betting, I don't know. I'm betting it's different for different Iranians. That if you're an Iranian from one political stream, it's going to be different than if you're an IRGC connected person. I'm positive of it. Positive.
Well, IRGC, they'll probably just bring like $50 million with them, and if you have money and you set it in a business, you can fast track. That's a big scandal too. Out east, a lot of them own property, and they own like Centerpoint Mall. What is it, Steeles and Young? I've heard that one is owned by an Iranian IRGC guy.
Right.
That's like a Chinese money laundering, but it's Iranian money laundering.
Yep. Yep. And there are apparently, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of IRGC agents here. Agents.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
And they police Iranians. They police Iranians. They police Iranians who are on the wrong side of the political spectrum of Iranian politics. It's nuts. And it's funny that you'd mentioned Wilson Raybould. So Wilson Raybould ran as an independent after she was dumped out of the Trudeau government, right? After the whole, that was the Levine scandal, right? That's where she was dumped out of. She was dumped out of that scandal. Then she ran in that same riding, South Granville, as an independent. You know who won? Was a liberal, a recent Iranian immigrant. And when you go back and the guy's name, Taleb.
I didn't know there were Iranian politicians.
At least one. Can't remember his name. Taleb. Something said something terrible with names. Anyway, so this guy runs, first time, never done anything, and he wins. Gee, that's funny. And you look into his bio anywhere you can find it. There's virtually nothing. This guy himself went to school at St. George's Academy, which is, I don't know, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year on the west side of Vancouver, on west side, not West Van. super expensive private school. That's where he went to school after his family came here. Well, what does that say? Well, you've just described that, who they were and how they got here.
So he cans the attorney general for doing her job, and he hires a suspicious Iranian on board.
Well, that's who got elected into that riding instead of Raybould.
It's this damn political machine. Like, they put so much money into it. You know what they do? They go to the candidate. They say, "Listen, you say what we tell you to say. You speak when we tell you to speak, and you stand where we tell you to stand," and they win.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's impossible not to be completely and utterly cynical and hopeless and demoralized with the system as it is. With the system as you know, but the systems are all going to change. It's inevitable.
Zelda, we're at an hour and 5 minutes. One other thing you and I talked about, and if you want to talk about it, I'll give you the opportunity now. You were telling me why you left the NDP. I can't remember if it was the left or the NDP. If you want to speak to it, go ahead.
I probably just like everybody else. I mean, probably just like everybody. Well, no, I guess maybe not everybody else. No, I don't know. I was brought up NDP in a not NDP place in a conservative region, because it was the party of human rights, and at that time progressive, not woke values, and yeah, I just stuck to the NDP, lived in Toronto and stuff, and I was active even in NDP a little bit. So I wasn't, it wasn't just my way of thinking. I was also, kind of active. But eventually I saw it was the party of, I saw it was the party of Jew hate. I'm Jewish. And that became completely clear. And then it's Jew hate it woke me up to the rest of the lies of progressivism.
And how did you feel this or see this, or when did you see? I'm just going to call it anti-Semitism. When did you see it emerge in the NDP?
Well, I guess in the early '80s. I guess in the early '80s, when all my co-NDPers, or a lot of them activist NDPers, were started hating on Zionism and Israel, and Jews had always been a part of progressive and humanitarian politics historically in Canada. So I was a little bit surprised that, and David Lewis was the NDP leader that I had grown up with as a kid. He was Jewish and pro-Israel. But they had all, and everybody around me had taken the UN definition. Was it the UN definition of Zionism as racism, or what? You're right. That was the shiny new definition of Zionism that came from the UN at that time, late '70s, maybe came in the '60s. Anyway, sorry, kind of fuzzy. But what I saw all around me, that this was an institutional thought, an institutional idea that Zionism is racism, Israel is racist. What? See, like, it's not even, it's like completely historically inaccurate. There's no fact and no accuracy to that. So I started to take a step back, and you take a step back, and you take a step back, and then the more woke it became, and so the distance between you and it got greater and greater, and you were able to see the rest of its lies.
I expected you to say like 2021 or something. I was not expecting 1980s. So
Right.
So what happened to you politically between the 80s and now?
Just gradual shifts with the times, with events. We also lived in France, so I got to see politics there, and because I'm a politics junkie, wherever I go, I was a politics junkie there too. just little by little, you started to see that the Greens and the Greens and all the entire spectrum of the left was factually wrong, historically wrong, morally bankrupt. It just made less and less and less sense. Little by little, I just shifted over. And like everybody says, everybody's got that cartoon where the right was here and the left was here, and the left moved way over there, and I was over here, right? So you end up, that cartoon, that meme. You've seen that
Yeah.
meme, right? Yeah. So I mean, I was on that. I'm that meme too. Yeah. Then you start to realize, oh yeah, left-wing economics make absolutely no sense. Oh yeah, Medicare isn't free. Oh yeah, somebody does have to pay for our roads. Oh yeah, somebody, oh, the schools, all the kids are being programmed because they're all public schools that are being blah 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 blah. And you start to see, oh yeah, Marxism. Oh, it's the same as it always was.
Yeah, like I don't know too much about the public education system, so maybe we do have government education, but I always say we don't have healthcare, we have health insurance. Like the government pays your insurance, and other private companies generally run the hospitals. That we call them, what do we call them? The medical associations or whatever, like coastal health
Oh, authority, like
health
government.
authorities. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
called health authorities. I'm like, just call them what they are, companies.
yeah, yeah, and it's all plugged into pharma. Or I mean, pharma's plugged into it, which of course then brings us back to, the drug problem of BC. Well, that's a whole other, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
we're right
another
back.
episode right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're right back. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Right then and there, all my feeds for YouTube get cut because we criticize Pfizer.
Yeah.
Um,
Whoops.
I I guess we can end it. It's been an hour and 10 minutes, Zelda. I enjoyed the conversation, but do you want to leave? You want to leave a positive message for the audience? What's your final thoughts?
Well, I mean, because I'm sort of in the spiritual woo-woo consciousness raising community, I'm very optimistic, but it's not necessarily that, oh, the government's going to be better and oh, this is going to, no, a lot of stuff is just going to fall apart and it's going to be worse before it's going to be better. I'm kind of one of these people, but everything is changing eventually for the better, but it won't look so good for a few decades, maybe. I kind of
Well,
have one of those big woo-woo, views, which is
we'll
based
see.
on
Yeah.
no evidence and, no facts, no evidence, no.
Yeah, I guess one step at a time.
Yeah,
Get a
and I mean,
new leader.
I've got kids, so I've got a stake. I'm not that you don't have the stake 'cause you don't have kids, but you really feel that stake, when you see them daily. I don't know. Yeah,
That's not fair. I got a couple of tomato plants. I have some steak.
there you go. There you go. And maybe a beefsteak tomato plants too. Ha ha ha. Yeah, I am very optimistic in a weird way. As long as truth keeps coming out, and it is, That's the scandals, all the scandals that we're seeing, just everything roiling and boiling. That's part of the changes that we have to have. We have to see the UK grooming gangs, and the Mideast has to be a mess, and Canada has to be a mess, and Trump has to be there, and this stuff. We need all this stuff to get it out of it's the infection out of the system.
When the history books in a couple hundred years talk about this era, they're gonna have to paint Trump as the protagonist, as the savior.
Yep.
I
Yep.
came out of nowhere. He lost an election, and then he comes back, and he
Yep.
just like slaps Prime Minister Justin Trudeau across the face.
Yep. Fantastic. Yep. Fantastic. And just a few years ago, anybody you spoke to, if you weren't anti-Trump, they regarded you like a monster.
Matt, you should have seen me in my community after January 6th. Like I'm surprised they didn't throw me in jail because I refused to admit that it was an insurrection. I'm like, look, they stormed the Capitol. I get it, but when a million people go somewhere to peaceably protest, that usually, like something is wrong. Do you remember when they were going to invade Iraq under Bush? Do you remember that?
Yep.
A million people went to New York. They never said that was an insurrection. That's a million people. You cannot ignore that.
Yep. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sure, I lost a lot of supporters with that comment of mine.
No, you've been vindicated. You've been vindicated. All of us who didn't see January 6th in America as an insurrection and thought that all those men shouldn't have been jailed, just like our Coots boys should not have been jailed. That was insane.
Yeah.
That is insane and is
Yeah.
continuing now. No, the January 6th imprisonments and the Coots imprisonments, same thing. Same thing. It's just this.
And what they do you have time? Another 5 minutes?
Sure.
What they did to the Coots boys, like that's terrifying, man. They put them in remand for several years, an information blackout, and then they overturned the verdict of the jury. And no one, and you try to talk about this, be like, well, yeah, but they're crazy boys. I'm like, well, I don't care about those boys. I care about myself. What if that happens to me?
Straight up totalitarian. Straight up totalitarian. You couldn't talk to a legal scholar in this country who would make any sense giving a defense of any kind of a defense of those guys having been jailed and been kept in jail and the conditions and the rollout of the trials. I think that there's something happening maybe today too, or at least this week. I think they're back. I think that something's happening in Lethbridge anyway, in the Lethbridge courthouse.
Jeez.
Incredible.
This stuff is happening because I noticed this. I'm interviewing a lot of whistleblowers and these victims. There's that woman, Detective
Grew.
Yep. Yeah.
What's her face?
Like,
what's her first name?
She did her job, and they're as an example, they're putting her through the legal system, and we're allowing it to happen.
And this is like 2 years now. 3 years.
Helen Gruss, I think Helen
Gruss. Yep. In Ottawa.
Yeah. She's one. Artur Pawlowski, you mentioned him earlier. He's getting charged under the Terrorism Act for giving a sermon. Because if you block critical infrastructure, you're it's all quasi-terrorism, and critical infrastructure includes a highway.
Oh.
Like literally, we're getting to the point where if you stick your thumb out on the highway to get as a hitchhiker, you could be considered a terrorist.
Meanwhile, Hamas are blocking roads all over the country.
Well, I know, but like it depends which side you're on. You're right. These like pro-Hamas protesters, they block the highway and they get away with it. And I understand we did this during the convoy, but that was at the border. And quite frankly, I don't think blocking the highway is the right thing to do unless it's extreme circumstances. But yeah, like if you're on the right side.
That was also about transportation. So an argument can be made for what happened during convoy. That was about transportation. It was about the truckers. It was about what the truckers couldn't do. You could make an argument. But you can't make an argument with Hamas, which is a terror organization.
Well, it's a terror organization. It's happening at thousands of miles away. But let's go back to the truckers. Even if they blocked a highway, which I totally do not agree with, when your government takes away your God-given mobility rights, I'm sorry, but blocking the highway might be warranted. Again, I wouldn't do it as a first resort, but they literally took away our ability to move.
Yeah. I was not going to get an argument for me on that. You're not. I mean, yeah.
And what about the other one? Do you remember right when the trucker convoy happened, a bunch of environmentalists with axes attacked those pipelines? Do you remember that? It happened at the same time as a trucker convoy. It got no media coverage out in Alberta. The environmentalists with masks and axes, they attack these pipelines, these pipeline workers. That's like attempted murder.
I actually don't remember it. There must have been so much craziness going on. I don't actually remember it.
Yeah, it was at the exact same time, and they buried that story. Like there's your terrorism charge right there.
Yeah.
Eco-terrorism.
Yeah.
All right. Let's end it before we pick it up for another hour.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Great conversation. I just think you're doing fantastic work. You're talking to everybody. It's fantastic. You're talking to everybody. And I loved your thing with Emily Duggan. That was fantastic.
That one was
She's
That poll that divided people, but I don't care. I think she's a nice
good,
girl, and
good.
she.
Have divisive people, then that just makes people, makes some neurons have to spark. Yeah, no,
Uh,
I love that. It was synchronicity. It's more woo-woo stuff. It was synchronicity. She didn't go to harass him. She didn't go to harass anybody. She was dragged along that one day by her family. She ends up there. She ends up inside the cordon. I mean, look up your Jung, your Jung and synchronicity. That was meant to be that little 30 seconds.
yeah, it was fortuitous,
Yeah,
serendipitous. I don't
yeah,
know, one or
yeah.
the other. Well, Zelda, thank you very much for coming on, and
Thank
I hope to
you.
see you back on at some point.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Payman. Thank you. Have a
Take
great day.
care. Bye.